I feel incredibly naive. 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was, I played Assassin's Creed 2 by Ubisoft, and I literally thought, oh my god, this is the start of gaming becoming like the best thing ever. This is the turning point. All games from here, there's going to be so much innovation. When I switched on Assassin's Creed 2, saw the open world, the story, all these activities around the map, I thought we were in for something special going forward. Turns out I was completely wrong. Turns out that was the moment that Ubisoft put their feet up and they decided, we've done enough. That's all we needed to do. We're just going to keep copying Assassin's Creed 2, later Far Cry 3 for the next 10, 15 years and call it a day. Every one of their titles since has been exactly the same. And they've even tried to trick people and go, hey, we've got a new IP, the Avatar game. And it's literally just a Far Cry reskin. What are we up to now? Like Assassin's Creed 8, Far Cry 12. I've lost count. I don't care. Most people don't care. And they certainly don't care about Star Wars Outlaws. This is Ubisoft's new big open world game. It's already had a bunch of controversy. And I really believe that the reason for the controversy is because people have just totally lost patience with this pathetic company. Even things like the main character in the game. So they hired a model and actress to play the main character, or at least model her face after her. And they sort of decided, oh, she's too beautiful, let's just uglify her a little bit. Because, oh my goodness, the male gaze, we've got to make sure she's realistic. That's what they call it these days. Even something like that, I don't think it would have been the biggest deal ever if it was another company. I think people wouldn't have noticed so much. It's not like she's Fable, the new Microsoft Fable, ugly. That's going a step way too far. But because it's Ubisoft, people just cracked it. And they said, we hate you. Anything you do that's wrong, we're going to let you know about it. And people feel the exact same way with their scheming monetization. Look at this. This feels like I've jumped 2 or 3 years back with just how ludicrous all these different editions of the game are. You buy the standard edition where you get the game and you're paying full price. I feel like that's a big deal when you buy a new single player game and you spend friggin' $100 on it in my country. It's a big deal. But these game publishers, especially Ubisoft, they treat it like, oh, you're only buying this one standard, you're only spending $100, what's going on here? Why aren't you buying the Ultimate Edition that is double the price to get all of these goodies? Again, basically punishing you for spending $100. Like, that's not good enough. Like, you've been a bad boy. And even these extras, it's just a checklist of all that's gone wrong with the industry over the years, and it just kind of reminds you, hits you over the face. 3 days early access for a single player game. Now, I will say, it's probably the least bad thing you can do, but when you combine that with all the other shite, like the season pass, friggin' pre-order bonuses, something about there was a Jabba the Hutt mission. Do you miss out on that if you don't pre-order? There was something like that going on. So locking out content unless you spend nearly $200 for this Ultimate Edition. Things like that, it just totally rubs you the wrong way. And I mean, we're all sick of it by now. It's nothing new that these scummy practices that go on. But when you just see it like the best of collection of all of them, that's where it gets really bad. And 3 days early access, I mean, it's basically you're getting the game late. So if you buy the game, the standard edition, you're getting it late. It's not a question of these privileged people who spent more money are getting it early. That they're blessed. No, the game was ready 3 days ago. The day you get it is the day it's ready. Ubisoft releasing Star Wars Outlaws, they will release it the second, the release date that's been set. It's going to be in such a workable order that they won't get sued, but that's it. It's still going to have the glitches, all the problems with it. They're just going to switch the on button, and people who've paid extra, they get it on time. They've had to spend a lot more money to get it on time. Anyone else who doesn't cough up for the Gold Ultimate Edition, they get it late. That is what early access means. The friggin' season pass. I have to wonder these days, like pre-ordering, we always say don't pre-order broken record, people still do it. It's a real shame. I'm guilty of it sometimes, like I did with Starfield, so I can't really talk. Look at what happened to me. I look like an idiot. But I will say the Season Pass is almost worse, because if everyone pre-orders, gets the Season Pass with these fancy editions, and they've got everyone's money, what possible incentive do they have to do a good job on this DLC? DLC's a pain. It feels like you go back to the nostalgic days of the 90s, even the early 2000s, and we had what we called expansions. Genuine content that felt like it had to stand on its own 2 feet. Game companies had to sell that expansion to people. But now the DLC, because it's included in something like a Season Pass, it's usually the most lazy content possible. The value proposition. You buy the game full price for $100 and you get, 40, 50 hours of content. We won't go into the quality versus quantity debate, but that is important. But you get that 50 hours. The Season Pass probably costs, standalone, maybe half that price, and you get 3 hours of content. So the value proposition is never there, and it always feels like crap left on the cutting room floor. And it will be, because they get everyone's money up front with these pre-orders of the Season Pass in these editions. If they've got your money, they've got no reason to deliver quality. They're not having to sell it to you. You've already paid for it. A lot of people will have already paid for it. That's what happens, sadly. And it becomes like a Ponzi scheme where they don't want to put effort into it because they're ready to move on to the next project. They've already got your money. So, sadly, these people who see Star Wars, they see the marketing and they rush out to buy it. That's just what's going to go on. The most nefarious thing I see here, and this makes me question all of these editions, because again, it feels like it's from 3 or 4 years ago that some companies have realized that they can get such a big PR win by not having a lot of this nonsense. You look at Hogwarts Legacy, it had the early access, but it didn't have anything else. And I feel like that actually helped it to sell a lot of copies, because the single-player sort of online gaming crowd, message boards, YouTube, and so on, they were really praising that. And that filtered through to, let's say, the normies, who heard there was a great Harry Potter game coming, and they went out and bought it. It was the best-selling game of last year. So the PR win that you get there, I just have to wonder if having these crappy editions, do you actually end up making more money from doing this compared to having that incredibly positive word of mouth? Maybe that's just not the case, but there's got to be a reason that Warner Brothers, for instance, one of the greediest publishers in the world, I'd argue that they're worse than Ubisoft, they didn't have these fancy editions. From memory, maybe there was one edition, but it didn't have season passes and all that shit in it. Maybe it had an item or two. But from memory, it was pretty much just the base game early access and that was it. Why didn't they have everything else? I think that the PR win that they got was massive. You look at Dragon's Dogma 2 that tried to get a bit greedy with the microtransactions, some other shady stuff there. It turned out they barely affect the game. But I think that the PR disaster, the backlash that they got on release, that really harmed sales. I've heard it sold 2.5, 3 million copies. That's not very good in 2024 for a AAA game. And I do think it would have sold a lot more if they had that momentum going into launch, which they lost with the microtransactions. So I do think the PR stuff's important. But what I want to say is, it honestly seems like to me that maybe Ubisoft's intention isn't necessarily to sell these different editions. Because you look here on the right, and you have day one with Ubisoft Plus, and you get absolutely everything that comes in the Ultimate Edition, all these lame extras like the art book and so on, and you get that for $24 a month. If you just look at this screen, the different editions look like a total ripoff because of the last one here, the $24 a month, which is kind of like a Game Pass for Ubisoft-only titles. So why are they doing that? Why are they making some of these editions look like a borderline scam with how expensive they are? The only conclusion I can come to is what they really care about here is driving up these subscriptions. And we know that Ubisoft, they've come out and said themselves that they want you to get comfortable with not owning your games anymore. There was the whole controversy with The Crew. You may have heard of this big movement of not letting companies steal our games, steal our money by turning games off when the servers shut down, or however you want to refer to it. That's what happened with The Crew. They didn't want to support it anymore. You can't play it. There's no single player component. It's gone. If you own it, they take your license away. So I just think that some of the controversy there, maybe Ubisoft know that eventually there could be some regulation where if you buy a game, you buy Star Wars Outlaws, that you might not necessarily own it in technical terms, but the company has to at least provide a way for you to play it, or they've got to give you a refund. So the idea of pushing these subscriptions, it totally lines up with their view of you will own nothing and be happy. That is their philosophy. They've said that themselves. And I mean, $24 a month for their shite. Every game's the same. 100 plus PC games that you get, but they're copy and pastes of each other because they haven't taken a risk in like 20 years, this company. It's a little bit scary because I would, as much as I hate these additions, a world where millions and millions of people subscribe to Ubisoft Plus, and that's the way that we're consuming games with subscription services. I think some people maybe didn't see the forest with the trees with Xbox Game Pass, because maybe even now, I haven't looked into it for a while, it is a great deal on paper. If you were to subscribe to it, you were totally getting your money's worth. That's never really been for me, even if it's a saving. This is a hobby for me. I don't mind spending money on a hobby. I'm not looking for the cheapest bargain. This isn't my electricity bill. I'm happy to pay to have the most convenience for myself, so I've never been interested. But many people have subscribed to Game Pass, and it is a great deal on paper. The problem is you look down the track when enough people are subscribed and Xbox puts the prices up, it suddenly doesn't become a good deal. But then they say, hey, no, we're taking all of the toys, you can't buy games anymore. The only way to consume our games is to subscribe. That is a reality that could hit us one day. It's a very scary reality. But remember that, say, a Microsoft, they own so many IPs now, so many studios, and they could reach a point where they genuinely do that if they get their act together and not every single game they release is a total dud. Maybe that will happen. Maybe that's a pipe dream for Phil Spencer and co. But Ubisoft seem on board with it. These additions, again, it feels like a blast from the past, an unpleasant one looking at these, and so many of these single-player games, at least in the last year or two, have started to move away from some of this. But Ubisoft, they continue with it, and I think that the reason is this Ubisoft Plus, that they want to push subscriptions, and this is the real start of that. They're using a big IP to push this. I'm not sure if you can do all the same things on consoles, but definitely on PC, it seems a major part of their business strategy. They've been having trouble, maybe not totally financially, but some games have been underperforming, and given they are all fodder, they put most of their games on sale anyway after like a week. Let's be real, who buys one of their games on release for full price? You'd have to be dumb because it's in the bargain bin for like $15 the following week. You might as well wait. I mean, you're already getting it late with this early access crap if you don't buy into that anyway, so you may as well wait for that sale. I think there is going to come a day where the only way to access Ubisoft games is to subscribe. $24 a month right now, maybe cheaper if you're outside Australia. We've got the worst currency. But that is going to be the last straw for me, at least. There's not a chance I consume any of their games down the track if you have to be part of some subscription service. I hate them with a passion. They're awful. I want to try and own my games. I know that doesn't really happen even on Steam. GOG's the closest that we get. But I at least want to support the idea of it. They give us the options of these Ultimate Editions, but it's such a rip-off. The day one with Ubisoft Plus, it looks like a good deal. So that's what I see here. I see a big rip-off, but the major motivation is to get people on that subscription conveyor belt, and that's going to be their focus going forward. The good news is that I don't think it's going to work. I really hope it doesn't work, because if we get to that stage where everything, even in gaming, is a subscription, that's where I might just fall off and might just go full indie older games only. I cannot deal with that. I know that there's studios like Larian who've basically said they never do it. They refuse to go onto Game Pass. But who knows? If everyone else follows suit, we could be in for a bad time. But I don't want this game to succeed. It looks crap. It looks run-of-the-mill. Respawn EA with those Jedi Fallen Order games, they were at least trying something. Not original games by any means. They sort of copied a little bit of everything from other titles, Dark Souls and Uncharted and others. But it was still a reasonably good time with an existing IP. So I commend them for that. And they didn't have any nonsense really in the games with the various editions. So all I can really hope is that people see this all for what it is. They don't buy into the game because of marketing, because of hype. And they just look at the content that you're actually getting. This is a reskinned Assassin's Creed and so on. There's nothing original here. The Star Wars coat of paint, it's like the movies these days. You go and see one, it's not even really Star Wars. Disney fan fiction, total garbage. They buy up fancy names, they build big budget projects, but they're a total farce. I'd be avoiding this unless they totally surprise us and I'm completely wrong. Avoiding it at all costs. And I hope this subscription crap fails. Ubisoft, they're an awful company. They've done nothing creative in a long, long time. Rayman, maybe the Rabbids games aside, I hope that there comes a time where it's actually financially the best decision for them to go back to creativity. I don't know who's buying these games, especially something like a Far Cry 6. I don't know anyone who likes it. How is that game making any sort of money? I don't know. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.